All right then, so now what we need to do is we need to create this kind of design, which is exactly that's what we are about to do now. All right, so to do that, what we need to do is the place where we are displaying the text called feeds, we need to replace that stuff. This is the place where we are displaying that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new component. Under the components folder, I'm going to create a new file called feeds.jsx. So basically we are going to supply all the feeds into this feeds component, and once we are inside this feeds component, I'm going to render one by one this particular component. Okay, so we are trying to assume this entire stuff like this. Wait a second, like this is going to be the entire feeds stuff. Inside this feeds, I'm going to get this one by one in inner components. All right, that's what we are about to do now. So here RN FE, one second, still showing that option. Yes, RN FE, so that will create the React functional export component. And I'm going to create one more file inside the components folder called index.js. So basically what we are trying to do is we are trying to export this components folder. So export default as feeds from where /feeds. So we are exporting it so we can avoid the multi-line imports. If you're adding the index and if you're exporting the data and everything in this specific way, we can avoid the multi-line imports whenever you're trying to import the components. All right, so let me close this. We don't need it for right now. And let me go here, and this is the place where it's going to display that complete feed. So I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to say feeds, which is going to come from components folder. So let me go to the top and let me import it by myself because it's not showing the suggestion of it. So import from // components folder and bring the feeds component. All right, just like the way, and now the error is gone. So inside this I need to send the feeds. So feeds equals to feeds. All right, so now we are sending the feed. So now we are sharing the feeds object over there. So let's save this changes. If I am saving this changes, now it's been refreshed and the feeds component is loaded over here. All right, so let's get back to the feeds container, feeds component. So inside this feeds component, now what I need to do is, so I need to destructure the feeds object, whatever we are having over here. Then I need to create one another sub component. Then I need to send it to that particular component. So let me show you what I'm trying to explain over here. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Here I'm going to destructure it because that's the property which we created. So copy it and I'm going to paste it over here. Okay, so to avoid it, the name config, if you are feeling that you are confused with the multiple variable names of feeds, feel free to keep the different property names for your component. Okay, so in this case I'm just going to keep it as it is. Well, for this view is going to be class name, and of course it's going to be the flex and item center, and justify it in the center, and everything is going to be in the row direction. So instead of keeping it in the column direction, I'm just going to keep it in the row direction, and I'm going to wrap every single object whatever that we are trying to come inside. All right, so then now what we need to do is, if there is a feeds data, if the feeds data length is greater than 0, that means you're having something to display over there. Otherwise you don't have anything to display, so we need to display something else like no data or no data found, something like that. So here I'm going to render, so feeds, if the feeds (length, length). So we need to do the conditional rendering because sometimes it takes some time to fetch the data. So until then it should not throw any unwanted issues. That's the reason. If the length is greater than 0, that means we have something to display. So this is the place where we need to display something. If not, this is the place I need to get the text. I'm just going to, not a text, I'm just going to say a view, and I'm going to close that view. And basically this view is going to be a full screen, width full, and hatch as a 64, and flex item center, justify center. And inside here, I'm just going to say, I'm going to bring that activity indicator, which we added somewhere. Where we added it? Here we go. This is the one. Let me copy this, paste it over here. Let's import this activity indicator. All right, so now it's imported. All right, so now let me add one more thing over here, like text, and I'm just going to say no data. No data. So let me save these changes, and now you can see it's showing us no data. Why it's showing like that? We're having something to display. So if we have something, then let me say text, and let me say it as feeds. Save the changes, reload it. We are getting some error. What is that error? Cannot read the properties of feeds, null. So the place where we are getting feeds.feeds. All right, so this is the place where we are getting that issue. So let's solve that issue. Now the issue is solved, and since still we are getting the node, oh my bad, the problem is over here is if the feeds dot length is greater than 0, then of course this will be displaying the condition whatever we returned, it's correct, but what's the problem? So wait a second. So when we are trying to print this detail, so how we printed it, because basically we are trying to fetch the array, right? So we are trying to fetch the array of objects, but inside the feeds we also have one more object called feeds. So in that object only we are having the array of objects. So I need to send it in this way, feeds.feeds. That's the issue. Now it's display the text as feeds. All right, because now you will get the array of objects over here. Of course the array of objects having the greater than 0 length. That's the reason we are giving that text over here. So now in this place I'm going to create one more component like feed detail.jsx, and here RNFE, save the changes, and let me copy this and paste it over here. And I'm just going to say feed detail. Let me copy this and let me paste it over here, save the changes. And now what we need to do is, instead of this text component, I need to bring that feeds over here. So I'm going to bring the React fragments. Inside this React fragments, I'm going to say feeds. If the feeds dot length is greater than 0, then of course we are trying to bring it inside here. So I'm just going to use the map function to render it. So I'm going to get the item and as well as the index of that item, and I'm going to call a callback function, and I'm going to call the feed details. All right, so basically this feed detail, it's not supposed to come from here, it's supposed to come from this components folder. All right, that's fine. So I need to give a key prop because it's need to monitor each and every component with a unique key. So that's the reason. Then I'm going to send the data, and basically the data is going to be the item. So now these things will be rendered multiple times, and you can see we have multiple feed details. The reason is because this is rendered multiple times. That's the reason we are getting that feed details more than one time. Now what we need to do, we have to customize this feed details which looks exactly the same way how we are having it over here. All right, so let's go ahead and do that stuff right now.